be ready to go next fiscal year.
Yeah,
You still have to go to town meeting.
Yeah,
so-
I personally don't have a problem this fiscal year, next fiscal year, if we can come to an agreement.
Exactly.
This would be the perfect place for the state to stand up and make it right.
Okay, all right, so
I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for...
Well, but it's only true though, because it's not on our part. We held up our end of the bargain.
Yes.
You know, and they didn't, you know, and there was no valid reason as to why they didn't
That's right.
stand up for it.
And we went ahead with good faith.
Yes.
And we appreciate everything that you've done to try to make it right.
Okay, so what I can say to my committee, in all honesty, listen, I offered, would the town accept if the property does come in as a buildable lot? Would the town accept less than fair market value? And the Board of Selectmen said, nah, come on.
All things considered, with you know, everything
with
else
the history.
included. The history, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Now,
This would be a great opportunity for the state,
that's right, to really make amends.
make it right.
And make it so we can go forward. Troy, is that, do you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. You know, I just want a fair and equitable situation to come to a conclusion on it, because we didn't get it, and it just feels like we're being
I know,
used.
yes.
Here we go again.
Well, what we can do, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud of some ways that my committee might want to proceed. We go ahead and have the appraisal done, but not, sort of, let me use the word, not just, you know, for fun. I mean, there is a serious intent of the town to work with us, to help us get you the money that we owe you. So, but I don't, you know, I want to have, if it doesn't come in as a buildable lot, then the property is really not going to be worth anywhere near the $52,500. So I need the selectmen to understand that.
Oh.
We will leave it up to the appraiser.
I don't see how the appraiser could figure it out.
Well, what they do is, there are iron pins out of the
Yeah,
property.
I've seen them, I walked the property,
Okay.
and I think there's enough. All you need is 40,000 square feet of contiguous uplands. It could be a thread running to another piece of upland.
Okay.
So in my mind's eye, looking at it, I said, there is
there is?
every reasonable
Okay.
concept here of
Okay.
making it.
And we, you know, our appraiser, we probably use Mark Jernigan. He's very good about calling, you know, chairman of different committees if he has a question about something. And so what he would do, and that was the purpose of the first map, is that he would probably be using wetland information that looks very much like this. I got this off of our Mass GIS. And so he would take this and bring it into his computer, draw lines, do measurements, things like that. This is not a very wetland that crosses the property, so he may talk to the Conservation Commission, see if it looks like, you know, you could get a wetland crossing there, or maybe there is enough. This is a little over 300 feet. For the upland part is about almost 300 feet. Maybe there is enough room up there.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, it doesn't have to be in any particular block or shape or form. It just has to be touching. It could be
Sure.
a meandering thread of uplands through the whole thing.
So maybe,
And obviously enough on one spot to actually put a house, but
yeah, but there's setbacks?
50, 30, 30.
Oh, that's it, okay. All right, some towns have 100 or something like that, all right. So maybe there is enough, in which case I'm gonna say to my committee, listen, the Board of Selectmen are very knowledgeable about the rules in Halifax, they know this piece of property, and they do think that this will be a buildable lot. I have always looked at it as, I don't think it could, but that doesn't mean that I'm right,
So
so.
up near the street, there is enough plateau.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, it doesn't have to be in chunks of anything, as long as it's touching. And you can literally walk on
Sure.
40,000 square feet of wetlands without crossing.
Okay.
You can make it work.
Then I will suggest to my committee that it's very possible that this could be a buildable lot. We need to understand that. It's still up to the appraiser, but if it is a buildable lot, then the town wants to be compensated for the full fair market value of the property.
Yes.
Yeah, and with that full and fair market value of the property, we will concede the $52,000 they owe us.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get paid more.
No,
than
no, I
that.
understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of what they're doing is giving us, they're
That's
really
the
still not paying
expectation.
52,000, they're
That's
not
right.
giving us 125 if it's a
Yeah.
buildable lot. They're giving us 125 plus
Minus-
52.
That's right. Yeah, or whatever.
At least in my mind, because,
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
you know,
But we will get this over with. And that's worth.
Why, you don't like coming to
That's
see us?
priceless.
I love coming here,
That's
Troy. This is my,
priceless.
it is my favorite town.
We have so much open space still to go off.
I think we know we should just have Thanksgiving together next year.
oh, I only wish I could
But
get
you're
that
at home.
same group in front of me.
Well, they don't allow turkey hunting on the property, so we'd be out of luck.
Oh, no, we don't allow turkey hunting.
Yeah, no, not the kind of turkey I'm talking about.
Oh. Okay, so I'm.
I mean, in theory, I personally, speaking for myself, I'm all for it. If we can make it work with those kinds of numbers.
If Tom's happy, everybody's
Well,
happy.
no, that's not true, but, you know, I have my
Well,
I have
in this
strong
case, it's
opinions
true.
about this. In case you haven't noticed.
Kim, were you around back then?
Yeah, I was on the finance committee
Oh,
back
okay.
then, and I actually went on the field trip to the
Yeah.
state. Because I think I was a selectman at the last time that they didn't do what they were
I
supposed to
went with
do.
my hawk on the property.
Yeah, so I have been around and.
Well, you know, going back to the fact that they didn't even include us in the rollbacks,
Yes.
included Hanson,
Yes.
and never even spoke to us.
Oh, see, I was not.
No,
I was
I know.
around.
That's why we had the lawsuit.
Right.
And Hanson wasn't party to the lawsuit, we were the party.
Right. Because they dealt with Dan Webster and those guys over there, and instead of those yokels over in Halifax, they wouldn't even know it's missing.
Yeah, they saw the stop sign in Bridgewater and decided to just stop right there at Hanson.
Wow, okay, so
Dirty
so
rotten
we're
Dick and
going to, the town wants the full fair market value. Basically whatever it is. If it's not buildable, if it's buildable, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what we're gonna start.
What if it comes in at 32?
Well, I have to come
Yeah.
talk to you.
Okay,
And then,
We'll figure out the rest. Let's just hope
yeah.
this works out.
Okay.
Well, then we'll be on to another parcel to make up
That's what
the
I knew.
difference.
I know.
And that, I don't know what that would be.
I'm just kidding. I'm being facetious. We're kicking this can down the road here, and
Yeah.
Because the other option is to keep you hostage.
Well, which is okay, but,
you can't have
Well,
it back until we.
We're
One
gonna
way
build
one way of doing
a
it is bring your committee down here, we can lock them in a room and find
We're
out
gonna,
what
you're gonna
we're
build a
do.
fort, and we're gonna keep you in the fort until this day.
Rapunzel or something. All right. Okay, so
Go,
that's what I'll talk to my committee about.
Okay.
See if they will.
And tell them they can go to bed feeling
Yeah,
good
be
after
careful on
that.
that road out there,
To know that they
It's
did
not
the right
slippery.
thing.
Oh,
that now,
Oh, really?
it will be later.
Oh, well, I'm going home now. So.
you are?
Okay. Why does she
Because
get
we
the
would follow
opportunity
you.
to-
You've got a long ride, right? Where are you
Oh,
from?
Quincy.
Oh, please, that's not too bad.
No.
Just going to the city.
Yeah, no, it's just another 30 miles.
There's no cranberry bogs there.
Okay, all right, so, but if, let's say my committee agrees and we could go ahead and have the title and appraisal done. For some of the money that we expect to become available, we won't even know until March. And you're gonna have another town meeting, May 13th. If in fact the town meeting needs to approve this sale, then
Right.
it could be on the warrant for that.
You think you have that information back to us before our town meeting?
Oh,
Yes.
We could, you know, if they need a letter of intent, we could probably do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, but maybe not until March.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Until everyone knows. But I will ask my committee to go ahead and have the appraisal.
Well, I'd love to celebrate my birthday in March, with the state saying that they're gonna pay us money.
Oh, well,
That'd be a nice birthday gift,
what date's your birthday?
28th.
The 28th of March, okay, I'll have to remember that. So,
You sending you one card?
Since we're practically family. Thank you.
cupcakes or something.
Safe
All right.
travels, Joan.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you
You
very
too.
much.
All right, Charlie. Cemetery deeds, we did. Beautification committee, we did. Monpont Pond navigational hazards. Oh, yes.
Right. So Suzanne Lilly from the Mont Ponce Watershed Association read me about the status of the signage for navigational hazards on Mont Ponce Pond. I think we had talked about this sometime in the fall.
Fall.
And I think we had concluded, having talked to the police chief, that given the liability issue, in a sense of once we start getting in the business of posting both specific sites in general, we then sort of own that.
Yeah, but do we even have the rights to post this stuff out there, with as much as the state's responsible for these
Which
crimes?
is why I wrote the governor, I've
okay.
written the executive secretary for Energy and Environmental Affairs, our state senator and state rep, and waiting back to hear from all of them.
Yeah, because we can't even go to the beach unless we're on some endangered snail, and they want to go out with stuff on.
So, I'll wait to bring it. On Mudfest, the planning board's going to hold a public hearing on Thursday, February 7th at 6:35 on a request by Bob Bergstrom for site plan approval for the event. Ms. Bergstrom has requested waivers from all the site plan requirements, including elementary ones, such as including numeric dimensions for the lot lines. Which seems a little excessive in terms of the request. I could understand some of them. I'm not quite sure that we'd be too worried about contours, for instance.
Right.
But I think some minimal information should be included in the site plan. We certainly, when we do site plan review for other businesses, and for that matter, when people are coming in for variances and special permits from the zoning board of appeals, they're outlaying a fair amount of money to get those plans drawn up with dimensions and such. I don't necessarily think that Mudfest needs to meet all these requirements, but I think it should be meeting some of them. But having said that, I didn't know whether the board wanted to send a letter of comment to the planning board for the February 7th meeting or not, or if they wanted to attend, or what they'd like to do. And then I have a second comment about the plan, but I'll talk about that in a minute.
Does anybody have?
Well, I think they should be held to something.
Yeah.
You know, we require it of an individual walking in the door. I mean, to your point, Charlie, I don't think we need to have contours done, but at least, you know, some dimensions and setbacks to know, you know, I know that there's a conservancy line that runs through there at some point. Are we getting close to that? Are we not getting close to that? Are we in it? You know, I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
And has he given us any reasons why he wants to waive it?
No, we just have the submittal, and, I mean, it's not to you all, obviously, it's the planning board. The
Yeah.
submittal, as far as I remember reading the letter, simply stated that they were requesting the variances from all the requirements. That's it.
I mean, that just, on the face of it, it's troubling.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you want to do, whether you want to attend the meeting, whether you want me to compose a letter for your signature to send up to the planning board.
Maybe do both.
Yeah, I think we have another meeting. Didn't you and I discuss that February 5th?
7th.
7th. I have wage and personnel, that's
Right.
right. I knew I
Yep.
had something else. But I have zoning on there, so if I
Well, I
can
think
get-
we should at least send a letter to him expressing our views.
Yeah, and if we decide to,
Attend.
yeah.
I would
I'll
post it
post
just
it for
in
this
case,
stuff.
yeah.
The second thing is, unfortunately, when I did go over and look at the plan, unfortunately does not, as drawn at least, does not meet the requirements of the special permit. I didn't go through all the stipulations. One of the things is all the activities need to be at least 100 feet away from the lot lines. Well, as shown on the plan, because as much as they didn't lay out all the dimensions, they do have a scale. Based on that scale, it's not 100 feet away from the lot lines.
Oh,
Well,
man.
further than that, I mean, I looked at the plan, I had an opportunity to look at it, and it's on an engineer's stationery.
Stationery.
But there's no stamp, no signature, no certification of any type. I found that a little wanting, because we certainly wouldn't accept that from anybody else.
So, I'll make those points in the letter. I plan on, as much as I know Wage and Personnel's meeting, and usually I go to that meeting. I would
This is
still
more
plan-
important.
Yeah, I would still plan on going up. This is not, and I want to be very clear to our TV audience, I am not opposed to Mudfest. It's done
Oh, no,
a great
neither,
job.
we've always
Yeah,
been
yeah.
supportive.
It's
but, I
wonderful for
mean,
the town. We don't get complaints about it. I just think that in order.
Right is right.
An event of this magnitude should meet some minimal standards, that's all.
Yeah, we've always been supportive, and
Well, we
Right.
don't want something done for one individual. It opens the doors to maybe something
Yeah.
that's not quite as well run or put together as this one's gonna be.
and especially where the special permit conditions are needing to be met and satisfied. I think that's reasonable.
Surplus property, I'm going to ask the board to declare surplus 24 of the previous model voting booths. These are over at the school. Matt Durkee was able to get a grant to replace them, and so the town clerk has asked if they'd be declared surplus, so we'll just get them thrown out at this point there. I think they've been in use now for decades and we're falling apart.
I don't know that I'd actually call it a booth, but okay.
Whatever you want to call it, structure?
Do you need us
Yeah,
to
tent.
to declare that? Do I need a
So
vote?
moved.
Yes, I need a
Do I have a
vote.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
We had a report on soil contamination over at the plaza next to Rockland Trust. This is where the church is and such. Seems to be residue from the dry cleaning establishment that was there. There was a laundromat, but they also did dry cleaning
Yeah.
over there. There apparently are some chemicals in the groundwater and the soils in the area that are above the standards set by DEP. There's no specific action for the town. DEP, this is a matter with DEP and the, I think it's Vector South, I guess who's the owner of the property now. But what I'd like to do is ask, I'm going to send, my plan is to send DEP a letter just to keep us on the list for CCing for any other correspondence that goes back and forth. I don't think it, obviously, given the location, doesn't impinge our well fields or anything, but nevertheless,
Well, did this come to light because of the situation that happened out behind Rockland Trust there when the
don't
poles
know.
came down? Because I think some of those transformers, they were testing the soil to see if there was any contamination
it
from the
may have been.
transformers, so.
It wasn't clear to me why, at this point, I mean, obviously, the laundromat dry cleaner's been gone for a number of years now, I don't know how long.
Yeah, I don't know how much dry cleaning, they didn't
Yeah.
actually do dry cleaning
They
and
did, they had, the laundry was there, the dry cleaning was sent out.
sent out, yeah.
Okay.
But I think what happened was there was a truck that came around
Yeah.
the building incorrectly,
It took
tore
out
down the
the
pole,
poles.
and
Okay.
some of the transformers came down,
Well, maybe
and I
that's
think it
what
was the
contamination-
contamination from the transformers.
Okay, so it's
Well, it's,
7:45. Okay.
Just, what I wanted, it said, just so, we'll get to that in a minute, but partner, meaning the firm that was doing the survey work, completed due diligence limited phase 2 investigation of the site in April to investigate the potential impact of chlorinated volatile chemical organic compounds to soil gas as a consequence of release or releases from a suspected dry cleaner.
Yeah, and that happened before the spill at Rockland,
So,
because that just happened a month ago, yeah.
but just,
That wasn't
Okay,
even a month
interesting.
ago it just happened.
Yeah,
so this has been an ongoing
Okay,
investigation.
I only said that because
Yeah, no.
I saw the environmental people over
yeah.
there.
No, I would have guessed the same thing.
So you have hearings tonight on
7:45,
revocation for Class 2 license for Davis Automotive and the
Evergreen.
package store license for Evergreen. I wanted to report that Evergreen continues to be on schedule for its payment plan.
Oh, good.
And Davis has reached the point of now paying their fall 2018. So they're
Awesome.
very close to getting
Yay.
into the 30-day window, which is good. My recommendation to the board is that they continue both sets of hearings to 7:45 on March 26th.
Perfect. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in
fine.
favor?
All
All
right.
right.
It's probably a spam call.
Spam's calling. I need bread and mustard stat. Get it.
Forget the mustard, give me meal.
Wait, isn't spam?
Okay, do you want to hold for a moment? Oh,
It's actually,
Spam is a Hawaiian dish.
no, spam is the ham in a,
Well, I know it is, but it's a
Gentleman wants
whole.
direct line to National Grid. He's in one of our, he's a resident. I
Okay.
have the number.
Hawaiians, because of the World War II, love spam because it was part of their, they barbecue it, they cook it, they fry it, other things. I grew up on it, spam with ham.
we should keep it at the shelter. Okay, mooring permit.
Permits, just, no actions needed by the board, but just the Conservation Commission had received a call from a realtor who claimed the realtor's client, who was a property owner in Halifax, had a mooring permit, which the client felt was owned by the client and went with the property. So whoever purchased the property would also keep the mooring permit. I reviewed the matter with the police chief. There doesn't seem to be any specific file of mooring permits. I'm not saying they weren't granted in the past, but they don't seem to have good records showing who has them and where they're located. Setting that aside for the moment, however, I did review information from other communities across the state, and the consensus is that mooring permits are not owned, in the sense of, in many places you have to get them renewed every year to begin with. We don't do that,
It's a dock on the lake, on the pond.
but in this case, what would, mooring permits do not go with the property. They're not deeded rights for instance, to the pond or something like
Right.
that. If someone leaves, but they had a mooring permit, someone else can come in, purchase a property, they'll have to reapply, not so much reapply, but apply for a new mooring permit. So I relayed that information to the Conservation Commission Secretary, who's going to relay to the Realtor, and that's it from there. For the annual town meeting, we did get one more article. This is from the Water Department for a new service truck.
Did you set forward that the capital planning?
It's, yes.
Okay,
I
thank
did
you.
do that. Highway barn garage doors, we did receive 2 bids, one from Nadal
Nado.
Corporation for $73,800. The other was from E5 Builders at $27,800. The low bid was still greater than the amount that was originally appropriated, which was $21,700 back in May. My plan is to place an article on the special town meeting warrant next month and transfer the money from one of the other municipal and school building projects for which bids came in lower than the amount appropriated. And we do, having talked to Sandy and talked to Scott, there's money available to do that. So that would be one of the articles at the town meeting. Let's see, there's no action on this needed by the board. J&J Motorsports and the planning board. The planning board contacted J&J Motorsports, which is the new
Yes.
dealership at 413
The two
Plymouth Street, the
young
Merchant
men.
over for Hollywood. Their vehicles are being parked in areas that weren't approved on the site plan. So simply the planning board put them on notice that this is going on, and they'll continue to monitor the situation, and if it continues, then they'll take appropriate action on that. On the police chief contract, the chief formally wrote the board asking to start negotiations for fiscal 2020, which we'll do, which is not tonight. Council on Aging project, Webby Engineering, Webby had contacted Winslow Architects about bills for the work that they did on the project, which were all legitimate bills. Winslow indicated they would pay a portion of them out of the allowance set aside in the contract, with the town paying the remainder. There is money in the project budget for this, and I've notified Municipal and School Building Committee, and I'm waiting to hear back from them as to when the bills are going to be paid. Both Winslow Architects and Webby had contacted me separately about this. I guess they hadn't communicated with each other, so I brought everybody in and said, this is what we're doing, and everybody said, oh, okay, fine, we're going to do it this way. So basically, I'm at this point just waiting to hear from John Campbell or Scott and Turner. We did get a quarterly report from Colonial Power Group about electricity aggregation. There's really no news. It's about 1,900 of the customers in Halifax are part of the group. Their bills right now are lower than the National Grid bills. What happens every 6 months, that National Grid goes up and down, and what happens in the winter is the winter rate is higher, and the summer it's lower. So people are saving some money who are participating in the program right now.
Well, which in some cases is significant. I was solicited by somebody to join their electric group, and they were talking 4 cents a kilowatt hour more,
Yeah.
which was significant.
Significant.
Just on the unfair labor practice, this is an appeal of the grievance, although that might still happen. The unfair labor practice on Waterman is scheduled for March 14th. I've been in correspondence with Michael Gilman. It's just going to be him and me going.
Okay.
Steve does not have to go. You all do not have to attend either at this
Okay.
point. 407 South Street, because of the way the town foreclosed on the property, the previous owner does not have the simple right of redeeming the property for the amount owed, and would require reversal of the court's decision, which we got foreclosing on the property, with the town not opposing this action. At this point, council is still working with the family to have the property vacated at the end of next month, and the Council on Aging will try to assist where appropriate. I think they're trying to find alternate housing for the person who's living there at this point. NIPS, meaning the small bottles of fire water, or whatever they, what is it, Fireball?
Fireball.
Yeah, we want to
Yes.
get rid of those now.
Chelsea's banned them. Salem had indicated there's an interest in having a 5-cent deposit. I know there was legislation filed last year. Obviously, it needs to be a larger thing in the sense of, I don't think people are going to take them back for 5 cents, given they're throwing them out of the car in the first place, having had them for about 30 seconds, and
But maybe people would pick them up. for
Maybe.
$5.
Well, I could make about $2 every month from picking up the ones that are thrown on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I agree with you that
Yeah.
people
Not that
throw
I-
them out the window are just, first of all, they shouldn't be driving and drinking.
Right.
Well,
Let's
that's
establish
first
that.
well, I think that's one of the problems that the whole question is.
Right,
How do you enforce something like that?
But the 5-cent,
No, I'm not talking about the
The
fines,
banning of-
the banning of.
Well, Chelsea did. Basically, you tell your alcohol package stores you're no longer allowed to sell this type of product over a certain number of ounces, or not, sorry, under a certain number of ounces in this case. It would only work here if we've got the surrounding towns on board, because, as an example, if I'm over on Plymouth Street picking up trash there, I know exactly where most of those nip bottles come from. They came from East Bridgewater, Bridgewater.
Well, it takes a minute.
Yes, exactly.
Or less.
So, I
I'm
don't
getting
know,
the ones that are
I'm
being
not
bought
saying
down here.
the town by itself needs to solo and do something like this, but if the board was interested, I would ask our surrounding neighbors to see if there's any interest,
I think
or
it's
whether everybody just.
I think it's worthwhile.
I think that's a reasonable endeavor, yeah.
Wow, big
Yeah, big word, huh?
words.
I pick one word every day and throw it in there.
3 syllables, yes. Website update. Caesar and I had reviewed the non-price proposals, other than the one we had gotten from Civic Plus, which is a descendant of Virtual Town Hall, for a redo of the website.
Yeah.
We had picked one from a firm called Granicus. Basically, we liked the layout of their sites, the work they had done on ones we had seen in Massachusetts. And also, they're much more proactive about working with communities in the sense of there are regular workshops, training, and ideas presented as to what municipalities could be doing their website. The one-time cost for their redo would be $7,500. Civic Plus had quoted either $3,000 for, I want to say generic, but they have a series of templates. You pick one, and the site gets redesigned on that basis, or $4,500, which would be more of an upgrade in terms of the design. Granicus would charge us $4,000 starting in year 2 for the annual operating fee. The first year's fee would be $0, and then there'd be an increase of 5% each year. Civic Plus would continue along with whatever upgrade fee we went with the $3,000 or $4,500, to charge us the $3,000 annual fee. I've not been satisfied with Civic Plus VTH for the last few years because they haven't been very proactive. I mean, they maintain what we need in the sense of the website's not down. They had some speed issues during the last couple of months, which seemed to have
Yeah.
improved.
That's a
That's
fact.
a
Yeah.
fact. Jack.
Yes, but, overall, in terms of actual, what they said they would do, they're doing, they're just have not been doing more. And back when we started in 11, they seemed to be more proactive. For instance, they had a users group meeting in Sturbridge, presenting ideas.
But
things
they've
like that.
sold out since then, right?
Oh, yeah, because Civic Plus had purchased them a couple of years ago. Obviously, always the major factor with the website is not the design, it's simply the amount of time we're willing to spend updating. It doesn't matter what design you have, it's not going to be up to date unless you have
People
do it. So no matter whoever we pick, that's always going to be the challenge. And while I think Granicus is going to be more robust and better designed, there's an additional cost. If the board wanted to go with Civic Plus, I would recommend going at least with a $4,500 design rather than the $3,000. I really think, having seen them, the templates really are, in my mind, fairly generic. They're better than what we have now. The focus now is more on graphics than on verbiage. We have a very word-intensive, link-intensive front page, for instance. I think that was the standard back 8 or 9 years ago. It's no longer the standard now. But on the other part is, it's not as if I've got people pounding on my door, figuratively or literally, saying, hey, you got to do something about the website, other than I've had a couple people say, this piece is not up to date, which I am perfectly in agreement, but again, that's not a design issue. Where I'm going is that, if you remember, I talked with you all about this a couple months ago, Civic Plus wants us to move out of the old website design. I think it's by April 1st, if I remember, or April 30th. And so there's a push for us to make a decision one way or the other. If the board went with Granicus, I'm going to need to go to town meeting in February for the additional money. There's not money in the budget for it. So I would need the $7,500 at town meeting. If we go with Civic Plus, we can spread the $4,500 out over 3 years as part of its annual maintenance fee. So instead of $3,000 a year, it's going to be $4,500 a year for 3 years, and then it will drop again. That's similar to what we did with them first go-round. When we started the site in 11, we included the setup fee and spread it out over 3 years, and it worked, and then dropped down to the normal amount.
In a perfect world, which would you rather
I
have?
would rather go with Granicus if I would have a perfect world, but I need to go to town meeting for
Well,
that.
I think that's something we could bring up at town meeting, and, I think enough people use the site often enough that, we're gonna end up spending pretty much the same money. Let's get something we can use.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, so I'll talk to the board, we'll talk a little bit later about town meeting. There's only 3 or 4 articles, that would be one of them.
Okay.
I still need to go, I'll see the finance committee on Monday. If I get a lot of pushback from them.
Yeah, then we can talk.
Yeah, okay. Do we have an 8 o'clock?
Yes, we do. We have,
Which is going to be skipped. So,
yes,
why don't we do the 8 o'clock right now?
yes.
There's a letter from, it's more permits we talked about, water department, we talked about garage.
Waiting. The special town meeting.
No, I thought I had my letter here from the developer, not developer, for the,
Oh,
It was an email.
yeah, it was an
Yeah,
email.
From Joe
Well,
Watchman.
yeah, we had received the board, so to formally open the hearing, this was on a transfer of license from Evergreen to,
Ponson Inc., DBA Halifax
Right.
Liquor in Lyme.
and for whatever reasons, the latter would like to withdraw the application for the transfer of the liquor license without prejudice. I'm recommending that. If they want to reapply in 2 months or 6 months or whatever, then, be perfectly fine, but, they basically aren't interested immediately in doing the transfer, and as I mentioned earlier, Evergreen is keeping it to its payment plan, so that's worked out.
okay, do we?
There may be other issues regarding the building, but that's not part, that wasn't,
Well, it's his call, it's his decision to make, and I don't see any discussion is going to change that. I would move that we grant the withdrawal without prejudice.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
okay. Back to the other mail, Chapter 40B. John, I think I may have mentioned to each of you, John Peck has proposed a 30-site development. In terms of geography,
30
it's... Pardon?
30-unit development?
30-unit development. It's to the side and back of where the...
Coming in front, what the open
No,
field
the
is.
farmer's market, not farmer's
Yeah.
market, but the farm stand.
Nazarella.
Nazareth Farms.
Behind the
there.
bank,
Yeah.
pretty much.
So he sent the application to Mass Housing. Mass Housing's doing an informal site visit tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I just got the notice this afternoon that was going to happen.
They approve everything.
Right. So obviously we'll have to go on everything else, but I wanted the board to be aware of it. There's no point in me posting, obviously, it's for less than 40 hours, but I wanted the board to be aware that they were coming through. I did send a note out to the departments. I'm going to make an effort to go out there. In terms of the site itself, there may be other issues, but there are wetlands problems up the wazoo.
Yeah.
In terms of geography, it's a much better site than previous sites we've seen, whether it's on Franklin Street or off of Elm Street and such, in the sense of at least it's in the sidewalk system, it's
Yeah.
easy to stop and shop and Walmart.
Right.
It at least meets some of the criteria
Yeah,
set
right.
out in the statute, yeah. I mean, you could literally walk a sidewalk all the way to the train station if you were so inclined.
So inclined,
Yeah.
I can't,
I like that term.
I got Steve and Donna
Same
tomorrow,
plan?
you
Yeah,
know,
that's my second.
Mom and Dad Day. Wednesday's
So,
the
just so the board's aware. For the special town meeting, we had 4 articles that came up, and I'll go through them one at a time.
sorry.
We need the additional appropriation for the fire suppression system. I have language from council, from bond council already, and from our previous bond council, I'm reviewing it with our current bond council. We'll have the actual number. I don't think we're not gonna have the actual number before I go to press. it's gonna be a certain sum or something like that, and there's nothing I
That's
can
the
do
best we
about
can
that.
do, yeah.
Because the bids aren't due until February 7th.
Yep.
But we'll have that information available on the website and everywhere else before town meeting.
So special town meeting is the 25th of
Right.
February. And we don't think you're having it in time enough for that?
Well, the bids are gonna be in on
2
February
weeks, you gotta be at
7th.
least 2 weeks ahead of
Right,
time,
the warrant needs to be posted at least 2 weeks in advance, so that would be the 11th. I think it's pushing it, possibly, maybe we'll have the exact language, that's a good point.
Yeah,
It's, let's see, 11, 10, 9, I think that's Thursday. I have to work with Barbara, because the bids are due at the end of the day on Thursday, I think at 4 o'clock. I'd have to work with Barbara about, and with Pam, to get the warrants available and such. We'd have, and have to
Oh,
talk to
Harding.
Harding about how quickly they can get a turnaround. It won't be something I can put on a postcard, unfortunately, because there'll be a couple more articles in this.
Right.
But let me see what I can do about getting the amount in there. The other thing is I'm working with Vertex to get an amount for their project manager services still, because we need them for somebody on site. Like we talked about this on a part-time basis at least. We talked about the highway garage door account. I'm going to be asking that 7,300 be transferred based on the bid that we received and any possible change orders. If I put in just the difference between the bid and what we originally appropriated, that just lends a Murphy an opportunity to mess things up again. So I'll be asking for a little bit more money than that. We just talked about the website, so I'll ask for $7,500 to cover the Granicus cost, but I'll talk with the Finance Committee about this tomorrow, on Monday. And then Ponset Pond, we have money, I'm still working on the state grant that we're getting for the year we're in. We have money set aside from previous articles, including this past May. But what I'm trying to do is have sufficient money to cover both West and East Ponset Pond. Because obviously while we didn't have any closures on West side, East we did during last summer.
Right.
And the idea is now to hit both sides. So I'm going to be asking for another $10,000. I'm not sure about the source, but for another $10,000 so we can do the treatment over East Mount Ponset Pond.
because if we don't do one, we just end up sending it over to the other.
That, and also simply, if the problem was in East Mount Ponset, I think people should be able to swim there just as much as, West Mount Ponset. So those are the 4 articles. I'm not aware of anybody else there are other matters that we could have brought to this meeting, but I don't see the reason to wait until May. For Mount Ponset Pond, I need a commitment before May so that we can work with Solitude and with the state to make that happen. With the website, I need to have that up and running this spring again before May. I'd like, for the garage doors, there's no reason to wait. They need to be replaced. And obviously for the fire suppression system, waiting until May, the bidders aren't going to hold their
That
bids for
doesn't
3
help
months.
us, yeah.
And we weren't going to wait until May. As we
And
did
they're not
last
going to
year.
commit.
Right. So
It is getting cold in here. Yeah, we can turn the heat
that's
back
why,
on.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can turn the
Can I
heat back
just a
on.
little
No,
bit?
yeah.
Just is getting cold, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, we have to
Yeah.
shut the heat.
This is why I'm wearing
I
this
mean,
rather than a
I'm still
jacket.
numb from being out shoveling in freezing temperatures.
I'm comfortable. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We're cold, I know, and yours actually was a little louder
come there's
than
icicles
this.
coming off your
I can
forehead.
hear it.
This is what I have in my office. That's
I know, but here, it just sounds
Try
a
not to
little
let
louder.
it smudge.
I don't know why
I
it's so
know, I should put
loud.
some on.
It is
You're
here.
kicking, no, just kidding.
No, keep it on to
No,
get the
I'm
chill
cold. I'm
out.
like,
but,
I should
yeah.
have grabbed my sweater when I was in there, but I'm like, boom.
I saw Phil Taylor come, he's here. I wonder if we can start early. Because we'll be done.
Well, we can at least do our executive session, right?
Oh yeah, but we're waiting for the police chief, can you text your brother? Could we do the executive session before, no, would we,
Well,
no?
because we're waiting for both chiefs
Yeah.
and for Steve.
Oh, Steve too, all right.
Yeah, I mean, we had the liquor license, we assumed when we
I
did
saw
this.
Phil Taylor walk in.
Okay.
Went into the restroom.
Yeah, then you walk
Yeah,
down.
and then the Housing Authority 815, That's obviously, as I mentioned, that's going to be postponed to some indefinite date. I assume that was going to take a certain amount of time, so I'm sorry.
No apologies, Charlie.
Well-
We're just very efficient here in
Yeah.
town of Halifax.
Pam, you have anything we need? No road
No,
opening, no road
that's two big
closing?
words there, Tom. Sum it down.
I mean, I guess it's up to the board. If they want to talk to Attorney Taylor now.
I just want you to.
Yes, I think it would be
They could do
helpful.
that, and then.
We can go
um,
into, we can
we-
text.
Well, we can, you know, and John
Okay.
also would say, hey, come on down.
Yeah. Let's do
Okay,
that.
so
to freeze me out so that you do something secret.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
we do.
those are our nefarious plans. We must eliminate you.
Well, dude, you did walk in from your car with no jacket on. I mean, come on.
Everybody under the age of 40 does do that. Everybody the age of 40 does not work.
Well, he's not wearing shorts at least.
I leave it in the
I
car.
have it in the car.
That's what my son does.
I didn't wear a
Keeping the seat
All
warm,
of my
is
boys
it?
do that.
Yep.
My daughters used to do it all the time. Where's your jacket? Well, I left it on the back of the
Have a
seat.
jacket in the car, pair of gloves. this
Was the
and
seat
that.
cold?
In case you break down, yeah.
Oh, you know what you should keep in the car, and I just picked some up? I have hand warmers, you know, like body
Oh, yeah.
warmers in case you break down. You should do that.
Package of those.
Yes. I
What's
just
the
got
job
a
like?
pack,
Picked up a stack of them.
Boys are going skiing in Colorado.
Put inside the gloves. and
I
keep
keep them in
warm.
case we lose electricity.
Well, that's a really good idea, though, to keep them in the house.
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm at the shelter, but.
I just go out and start my generator, I don't know what.
Well,
the
that's
rest
why
of
you
it-
have animals.
I would do that.
Shave the hair off the bad boy and lay him up next to you.
Yeah.
I could go in and say, hey, finish your business.
He went down the hallway.
No, you went down the hall.
Oh,
Can you go
okay.
get him? Thank you.
I texted John and Steve.
Thank you, did they answer?
Well, John answered, he's on his way over.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we are.
Too bad.
I know.
What's that?
Nothing.
They're trying to pull
I'm thinking
something
about
on.
that.
There's something going on
Yeah,
between
something,
you two.
yeah,
The bad
I'm catching
thing.
on.
I gotta come up with something. There's something.
This heat gets really fast.
Yeah. keep-
Well, yeah, well.
Hot air,
it's
heat.
kinda the forced hot air always does.
But it's
But then
hard.
it cools down quick too. We had our old house on, now I have base boards.
But what's tough is you can't hear over this when you're doing your minutes.
No.
Yeah.
So that's why, I know, it's really hard. And I was afraid that was gonna drown it out, because I could hear that.
Really.
Way over
But
here.
You know what, as long as your mics are close to close to you guys, it's, they
Steve
work.
said 20 minutes.
Okay, well, this is gonna take at least 20 minutes. Yeah,
He's got a nerve.
really.
Was he out de-icing the whole road?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, we can be quick. Okay, we can move it along. Is he here?
Yeah, he's coming, well,
Is-
no,
Are we waiting for
Scott,
Scott?
Phil thought Scott might be coming, but he's willing to start up.
I mean, do you think Scott's coming? Because we'd hate to start early if he's gonna be here.
We can wait.
He didn't tell me no yet.
Oh, okay,
When I
so why
last-
don't we wait?
When I last spoke to him,
We can take a 10-minute recess.
yeah, I'll text him now if I'm really.
Yeah, do you want to take a 10-minute recess?
Yeah,
Let's do that. We're gonna take a 10 minutes recess.
yeah, don't want to walk.
All right, we're back on and we have an appointment with Scott Klosser and Attorney Taylor about the Hilltop
Want to
Farm.
still run the heat?
Are you good?
I'm good, you
Yeah, you can, we're gonna turn the heat down because we can't really hear. Yeah, get a blanket.
Get a blanket.
With the chief.
I have no idea. He's in the hallway, I think.
No, Charlie went to shut off the heat so we can all hear each other because it's very loud. And then we could start. Thank you, Charlie.
What's that? You didn't actually turn it down? Well, it takes a
Oh,
minute to
no, no, no,
purge.
he went to turn the heat down because this is an old building and we can't hear. And we got cold, as you remember, a few minutes ago, and had to turn it on. Getting your camera ready? Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Okay, so do you want to take it?
So this is a continuation of the discussion the board held a couple weeks ago with Attorney Taylor about the request to increase the number of show days from 30 to 32 or 33, I think it is. 33. For calendar 2019. And the board agreed to take it under advisement and revisit the subject either with Attorney Taylor or Mr. Clausen or both, whoever came in tonight. At this point, Mr. Clausen has sent in show dates for 2019. There are two concerns that I had. One is the actual number of show days listed as 31 in the request that was sent in by email, and also they don't seem to exactly match the days that are shown on the website. So I'm a little confused as to if it's, we're at 30 right now, would it be just, is it 30? I guess I'm confused because the request, not additional days, but even what's showing right now on the website and the email that was sent to the town lists 31, which is not allowed unless the board, through some process, comes to agreement to increase the number of days.
So is the website, was that for this year's?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's, they made a mistake on the August 19th, which is a Monday.
Okay, I don't know.
Well, should have been the 20th.
So, okay, so the 20th through the 24th, not the 25th.
Correct.
'Cause
The
the-
25th is the one I'm asking for.
Okay, because the website shows the 25th as occurring already.
Right. It shows,
It's on the website right now as being on the list.
okay, yeah,
So that would make it 31,
31, right.
if we went from 20 to 24. Okay, because the email was 19 to 24.
Right, it should have been 20 to 24.
Okay. So, I mean, that's where things stand at this point. So, if you want me to elaborate a little more, reviewing the agreement, it's, while the number of shows, the multi-day shows, can increase without going back to the judge for change in the agreement. It's clear that that's what it says there. It doesn't mention show days as being allowed to go by mutual agreement without going back to the judge. There's a line about the shows that can increase above 7 in terms of multi-days. There's not a similar line about the number of show days. The show days says 30, and it doesn't then say, but the board of selectmen can agree to increase the number of show days. It says that for the number of multi-day shows, which is different, which is the 7 multi-day shows.
Well, I can address that. So in the line you're talking about, I believe it's page 4, paragraph, or section 8. So the first line of the second paragraph of that does say the 7 multiple day horse shows. Horse shows being capitalized, and it's a defined term. The second line indicates additional horse shows may be held with the approval.
Right.
And the way I would read that would be is that horse show is not capitalized. So additional horse shows would also necessarily be interpreted to require additional show days.
Well, I
Well,
guess
we met with we met with our town council. We had 2 different attorneys from 2 different firms look at this, and they're both have explained to us that we do not have the power to change the agreement, that it would have to go back to court.
Well, I think that's under the agreement. However, I do believe that the board has the ability to approve any horse shows outside of this agreement. And now it's also being because this agreement means that it's automatic for Fieldstone Farms to have the shows that's listed in the agreement. But the agreement also makes it clear that everyone's on the same position, that the horse shows are allowed as of right, that there's no restriction under the bylaws of the town as to the horse shows themselves. the agreement says the town has to permit him to have this many shows on this many days. And then the agreement says that the authority of the town is related to public safety.
I don't believe that's how our attorney.
It says, well,
Neither of them.
it's, yeah, the regulation, the town's regulations for the horse shows relate to the interest of public health, safety, and environment. And it also, that the town alleges, although the conduct of the horse shows is permitted. So we have a 120 plus acre farm. So we're over 5 acres, we're agricultural, so the zoning bylaws don't directly apply. The shows are permitted in the towns, and the regulations for the town would be for the public health, safety, environment. And that's what the rest of this whole entire agreement is about, the safety issues. And the number of horse shows is, there'd be a question as to whether or not Scott would even have to ask for any of the horse show numbers outside of that. But we dealt with ahead of time, say this is how many of our automatic additional shows we're here.
Well, I guess if we had reached an agreement that allowed for unlimited, that would have been written into the agreement.
What do you mean?
Well, in the sense of, if it really wasn't an issue as to how many show days or how many shows we would have, then that would have been written into the agreement.
Well-
Instead, both sides agreed to very specific amounts of multi-day shows and show days. And we went through a number of months for very opportunity for making revisions to that. I see little reason why we would have reached that point and got into those numbers in there to then simply say, well, it really doesn't matter.
Well, 2 reasons. The original agreement had a limitation on the shows. And they'd gone, so from the 1993 agreement, was that the original, yeah? So there was a limitation on the number of shows. So when we came back here, we're starting with an established limitation that was rigid. There was no flexibility in that agreement whatsoever. Then when we had the agreement, we were looking to expand the number of shows under that agreement, but then we added a specific line to indicate that we can come to the Board of Selectmen to add more. So we would not have to go to the expense of everyone going to court.
More shows. Well, to be specific, it says more shows.
Well, it says, the first line, it's a defined term, limiting the number of multi-day shows. And then the second line, it's not capitalized, so it's not necessarily the defined term. But when you read.
Because the word isn't capitalized?
Yeah, the defined terms in the agreement are capitalized.
Okay.
So it's a minor point maybe. But
Okay.
when you read the agreement as a whole, when we put in there to give the Board of Selectmen the authority to add horse shows, I believe it would be fair to read into that the board would have to have the same authority to add days where needed. Because if we had 7 horse shows, 7 multi-day horse shows using 30 days, then we wanted to add another one, that first line would be meaningless to add more multi-day shows if you couldn't also add.
Well, if the shows were had less days in them, it would still fit inside the 30 days. I mean, you've got a 4-day show. If you had a 3-day show, you don't need as many days. But you can still have 7 shows.
You could read it both ways.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, it's open,
It goes both ways because the language is not so limited. And I think when you read it, we gave the power to add more horse shows, and I think with that would necessarily come the power to add more days. I mean, I think the alternative is also, you could do anyone who wants to use the property could do a separate application without having to do anything to do with this agreement. And what we're here is basically, we're asking one more show, and we have a group that's also here, they're here as well.
Yes, they were here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nice to
And
see
they're as well,
you.
because they want to host a show in June.
Yes.
There as well. So that's why we need the extra days. But I do believe that the agreement has that reading into it. I mean, had I known that's exactly what the council, I would have been happy to talk to them ahead of time. Point out, I think.
well, it wasn't just one council, it was both.
We had 2 different councils, because,
We had
I'll
our,
speak to myself, I was trying to figure out how it could be accomplished, and we were told by 2 different councils that it was not we didn't have the authority to do that and that we needed to go into court.
I disagree, because you only need to go into court if there was, well, I don't
But
think.
Phil, you don't represent the town of
Right, I
Halifax.
don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And you represent Mr. Clausen, and you're a very good attorney for Mr. Clausen, where I've pointed that out before. And so our counsel, two different firms, sat with us the other day and explained how the agreement was written and the fact that the town Board of Selectmen do not have the authority to grant the additional days without us going back to court.
And I still disagree with them,
Okay.
and.
As they disagree with you. And, you know,
Well,
here we go.
I don't know from what perspective or what their reasoning is. I don't know, I don't know if they looked into, I don't know if they focused just on that line.
Or the
if-
capitalizations of certain words.
I don't know if they drew any attention to that. I don't know if they focused on the beginning, where there's a clear understanding that the horse shows can be done as of right. And the only regulations for the town are, what I said, the public safety, environment.
So why do we even have an agreement if
Yeah,
it's
well,
right?
exactly,
So
yeah.
take me back to why there's even agreement, because
believe
if
that-
it was just a right, then we wouldn't have gone to court and had this agreement.
So back in 1993, and this was before my time, my recollection is from what I was told historically is that there was a building permit issue on the property, and for some reason.
There was?
for-
Shocking.
Yeah, so for some reason, in resolving that, this came up, and I believe there was also probably a difference of opinion as to what authority the town had over what could be done. So the town reached this understanding, and because there was an ongoing case, it was made as a part of a consent agreement to that. I think it was to basically prevent a bigger problem.
Okay.
The agreement provides, I think, that the town has no say in this number of shows. Other than what's in the agreement, just for the number of shows. Everything else about the shows is, I think the other regulations are all taken care of and addressed in here and through outside boards.
Okay, to Charlie's point, may I interrupt you for a second? To Charlie's point, I believe and Pam will know, I think we spent about 9 meetings working on this agreement. So, to Charlie's point, 9 meetings working on this, why did we even reference any limit to shows? If, to your point is, you can do whatever you want.
Well, no, that wasn't my point.
Okay,
My
tell
point
me
is-
what your point
You
is.
can have as many shows as you want.
So back in 1993, there was already agreement that had a limitation in the shows.
Okay,
So we
so when we met for 9 meetings at least.
we
at a minimum-
expanded on that.
Okay,
And I believe there would be a question as to whether additional shows or any events could just be done at the property going outside of the agreement through any regular permitting type process.
okay. Outside of horse shows is what you're saying.
I think a horse show, I think we could still do additional the horseshoe, the agreement says the town cannot say no to these shows. Was it 30 shows?
Okay,
This is what the town, this is automatic.
okay.
And there's nothing in here, and then we put a line in this agreement, which wasn't contemplated before, about expanding it.
Okay, so,
And
and
that's-
you're referencing that particular line.
Yes. And we look in the beginning, it's clear, the use of the horse shows is permitted. And there's, outside of this agreement, there's no reference anywhere as to what can limit the horse show absent this agreement.
Okay,
So more or less it was a voluntary reduction in 93, a negotiated expansion, where both sides got some beneficial changes to the agreement. There's a lot of changes in the agreement that benefited the town.
that we just did 3 years ago.
Yeah, the benefit, when we modified this, there's mutual benefits to the modification.
Can you just remind me of what a really good benefit for the town of Halifax was in the agreement?
Enforcement, the
enforcement.
enforcement section.
Yes.
There was-
and that
Then
if
why does
rules
the
were not-
language even go in there
What?
about shows and dates? I mean, if you're saying that,
2 years ago, or
Yeah,
2 years
2
ago.
years ago.
it was already in there from 1993.
Why
so
wouldn't
why
we
did we
take
leave
it
it in
out?
there? Why is it
would-
even
yeah.
in there if it wasn't a negotiable item?
Because there was an agreement from 1993 that
That limits the shows.
But we went through this at exhaustion, as you would
Yeah,
imagine,
ad
for 9
nauseam,
meetings.
actually.
Why would we have not said, hey, by the way, We don't need this limit, because
Well,
by right, it's your
We'll be
right.
happy to join the town in vacating the agreement if your position, if you agree with the position that there's no limitation to the horse shows.
Well, I'd have to check with our town council before I would believe that, yeah.
Well, but, so, I think what the thing is, but we also added this new line to the agreement that didn't show up anywhere before.
And what was that?
That was about adding additional, that additional horse shows could be done with the Board of Selectmen. And that's what we're asking.
That's the extra line, Charlie?
Yeah, that's an extra line, because
So-
but that's the one he's arguing about the capital letters.
Oh,
So, and I guess it looks at how conservative do you, how conservatively do you read the line?
Or how liberally you read the law.
Right. I mean, it's either way.
And your job is to read it liberally, and we get that.
Right, and, well, in wrestling with this and looking for the argument, I believe it wouldn't, when you read the agreement, I don't know if the attorney's got into statutory construction and the contract, the construction of contracts. Language is not typically put in unless it has a purpose and a meaning. And here, the selectmen have the authority to add more shows, and with that would be implied also, to have more shows, there may need to be more days, and you can do it. Also, there are two parties to this agreement. Basically, the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Glassman. So what I think the attorney is, even if the attorney said, well, the agreement has these limitations, you get two parties to an agreement, they can agree that we can do this.
but I believe it was the liability that we open ourselves to, Charlie, could you remind me of that? About if the abutters could
Well,
hold
I mean,
us.
Well, that's part of it.
That's part of it, yeah, in the sense of, I mean, if we go down that road, then what's the limit? 35, 40, 45, 50, 100? I know you're asking for 33 today. Nothing prevents you, under your argument, from coming back next year and asking for 35, or 40, or whatever number you want.
Asking is the key word.
Right, I understand that.
Right,
But at some point, having gone through what we did a couple of summers ago, with all the interested parties in there as part of this,
including the butters.
including the butters.
Who have been notified of this process now.
Right, but my point simply is, at some point, you've got a horse of a different color
But I'm bummed.
between 30 and 60 or 100, or 7 shows and 10 shows and 20 shows. Very different. If I'm in a butter, maybe I can cope with this level that we've got right now. But I can't cope with something happening there every single week. Now, I don't know that that's how they feel, but we went through an extensive process to make sure that their views, their concerns, their questions, their comments were brought in, and worked very diligently with you to work out an agreement that was satisfactory to all parties.
And my,
The number of shows line is attached to the multi-day show line. It's not attached to the show day line. I would think that if we had meant to allow ourselves to increase the number of show days, we would have either put a duplicate or a similar line there, or just place that one line attached to the number of days.
well, I would say, to look at where it went, you know, I think the capitalization, the different definitions. But I also know when you talk about the abutters and that in people's interest, this process here was announced, and my recollection from last time is there was a single anonymous abutter calling, mentioning the loudspeaker, no details of when, and I can address the loudspeaker situation has been changed since we entered the agreement. So we have no idea if this person is referring to something old and just bringing up the same problems as before, or something new. But I'd also think, you know, when the abutters get notified and they choose not to do anything,
Can I comment on that?
of course,
And I will.
you guys, I don't think have to raise your hands, but
I just didn't want to interrupt you unnecessarily. Of course, if I'm in a butter and I'm out there and I get some notification that this is about to take place, I'm looking back and saying, no, we're already limited to 30 days. There's an agreement in place. So, you know, shows don't necessarily mean much to you. I don't think that an abutter would necessarily get alarmed knowing that there was an agreement already in place.
I entirely disagree with that, because the fact that the butter got notified that this was being asked, if there was a concern, they would contact you guys and say, what is, we don't think you should be doing this, and they would let you know. There is basically no abutter response to this. This was the second meeting. The first meeting, I don't consider an anonymous call without any details that we can respond to. Something credible to consider here.
Well, I think there were credible details, actually. Maybe, I'm not going to say you're right about the loudspeaker, since neither of us know when that complaint is from. But, they've mentioned about people going into driveways, they've mentioned the science issues.
Separate issue, we can.
Well, I understand, but, when you say that, making this anonymous phone call invalid, it isn't, as far as I'm concerned.
Who are they, well, if an abutter wants to speak, I think, who made the call about the loudspeaker? We need to know, where do they live? And what exactly is the show they're talking about? Because there's been changes to the sound system there. And Scott lives up near the nearest abutters to the property. And, yeah, the nearest abutters.
The nearest abutters is the opposite side,
No.
to where the horses, I spent a lot of time
I
in that
believe-
driveway. I can tell you where the noise
I
is coming
believe,
from,
my
not that I,
recollection is where the shows are, and that's Woodland, and then I think it's about.
right next door, right in the front.
Well, that's up where Scott's house is up
Excuse
in
me,
front.
nevertheless,
Right.
whether an abutter complained or not, it's our responsibility to take concerns at heart. And whether or not they've called or not, we had enough information from the last time we had these hearings, when we finally made the agreement, that in fact we would consider their feelings in this. Secondly, if you felt at the time you went into court that we had no right to give you a degree or anything else, a limited amount of shows, why didn't you fight for that at that time with the judge?
That was in 1993.
No.
No,
2 years
we're talking 2 years
We
ago.
reached an agreement.
Right.
That doesn't matter. You reached an agreement, but if you felt that you didn't have to make an agreement with us, that it was open carte blanche, that you could do anytime you want, why now are you bringing that subject up?
So you're advocating that the better position for Mr. Clausen in the town was expensive litigation on all sides?
If it was me and I felt it was my right, yeah, I'd be in there.
Well, I guess you have the town's checkbook then, but I guess.
No, I'm not talking
no,
about town check, I'm talking about as an individual. If I felt
It was a
compromise.
compromise.
And
Right.
it's a compromise that says that we as individuals can also deny. You can bring it before us, we can deny it, without giving a reason why.
Well, I guess there was a.
Am I right or wrong?
So the specific question,
The question is, if we deny this without giving a reason, what's your stance?
I'll have to talk to Mr. Clausen about how he wants to pursue it, because the town and Mr. Clausen both agree that the horse shows are as of right. And the show, it says it right in the agreement, the town agrees. Horse shows on this property is as of right. I think that's page one.
Yeah,
That's-
the attorney
That's
said.
page one. So these horse shows are as of right. Then, in order to
Then
have
why are
certain,
we here?
we're here
Then why did we
because,
put in 30 days? That was an agreement. It was to take care of everybody, to placate all the abutters,
so we stopped.
to limit the amount of shows, to limit the whatever aggravation it is for the abutters. You obviously agreed to the amount of days, we agreed to the amount of days, and here we are.
Well, because when you say we agreed to another, so with the amount of days, we're dealing from a 1993 agreement. So.
Well, no, we're talking about an agreement from 2 years ago.
And so then the choice was, Scott at that time was looking, he wanted to have additional days. The town also had things that they wanted. So when the agreement got opened up, a lot of that was actually focused more on, I think, a lot with the fire department, a lot with.
It was required for the safety of the people who
Well,
are in the horse show.
it
So
was,
let's establish that who benefited from that are the people who get hurt, that they're gonna have a professional certified paramedic taking
There-
care of them. So we didn't benefit.
Well, actually, there
We
were-
are enforcing
No.
something that needs to happen for the safety of the people.
The implication is disputed that there was never qualified individuals.
Okay,
at
we're
the
not
time.
gonna go there, Phil, because we spent 9 weeks talking
We're not
about
going to
that.
revisit that.
But, well, we,
Because we have the fire chief in the back who
Yeah.
can speak to that.
yeah, we worked it all out. We went. I
Yes,
met with the
because it
fire
wasn't
chief.
adequate.
Well, I think there was licensing issues. And,
Yes!
Well, that sounds like inadequate.
Well, no, I think it was.
Okay, you know what, we could spend
Yeah,
20
we're
minutes on
not
that,
gonna
and let's
rehash
just
that.
talk about, so this is, I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna interrupt for a minute, because I'm gonna speak my truth about this whole situation, which is, I, of the three, was a little bit more open to adding the days, right? We talked a little bit about people not following the rules, having me upset because we're not getting responded to. But I was gonna try to see beyond that, because I just did. But when the attorney said to us, we cannot change this agreement, I am not gonna open the town of Halifax up for any kind of a lawsuit that we went beyond what the scope of our ability is. Okay, that's where I stand right now. Number two, you keep referencing the agreement from 1993, which I believe becomes void when we negotiated that agreement 2 years ago. And again, we spent at least nine meetings, and Abe was there for part of it. It was a painful process, of which not once did we discuss having it not be 30 days, not once. Even though we went through every detail of everything, and you talk about the benefits of the town. The benefits of the town is to make sure that our abutters were happy, and that the people, the one thing that I fought for personally was the paramedic thing, because we did not feel that you had a proper overseeing of the medical attention if somebody got hurt. So if you want to talk about a benefit, you make it seem like we're getting some kind of huge benefit for, the things that we put in the agreement. The things that we put in the agreement, again, was for the safety and for the abutters to be able to live in a peaceful way. So those were the benefits that we fought for the community. Okay, we know personally, I think the horse shows is a nice thing for the town of Halifax. But we had an agreement for 30 days. If we wanted it more than that, then we should have. And you talk about your capitalizing this letter, we had 2 different attorneys look at this. And 2 different attorneys have said to us, we do not have the power to add the days.
And can I address some of that?
Sure.
So first, why is the 1993 agreement mentioned? Because the board's bringing it up, asking why are there certain things are in there. So they're in this agreement because they were carried over from the 1993 agreement. And the agreement was replaced wholesale. Rather than amending it, it was replaced wholesale. And so this is the controlling agreement. But why things are in here goes back to 1993. With regard to the abutters, I could address the other issues that brought up about the driveways and things like this. But, there's no specifics to really respond to about any specific issue, except when they're brought up, Mr. Clausen responds to them. With regard to some of the difference language in the agreement, I'd have to go back and look at all the drafts to see what edits there were. There was, and this is where I disagree with the council, however, wasn't provided any indication in advance about what council's opinion was in order to address it for them, to see if that changed what their advice to the town would be, or otherwise before today. And so I just think it's, with the town, with us putting in the agreement, the ability of the Board of Selectmen to have additional horse shows, I believe that includes days, show days as would be required, in order to give full meaning to that sentence. That's why I believe the Board of Selectmen has the authority to do that. With regard,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I think that was pretty much it.
I was or not.
Well, I guess you could say, or you say or not, but then we come back to when the board makes a decision, I think they do have to have a rationale behind it.
Well-
And when the board has already entered an agreement that says, these shows are as of right, and this is what our regulations are, So-
These 30 shows are these,
No, any horse shows as of right.
but the 30-day
We have-
limitation.
we have an
Doesn't say
agreement.
any shows.
It doesn't say, no, it says, the exact language is, the town has alleged that although the conduct of horse shows is permitted, not these horse shows, not a set number of horse shows, the
Horse shows
conduct
in
of
general.
horse shows. So the town agrees, and the town's position is, as of right, Mr. Clausen can hold horse shows on this property.
Could you read the line about the 30-day show?
Which line specifically?
Oh, you tell me, because that's what we're looking at.
Well, we,
That where it limits to 30 days. Could you read that out for me?
so, I think this might be the line. Commencing on the effective date, Clausen shall limit the number of show days on the premise to 30 days in any calendar year.
Okay.
Shall.
Yeah, it says he shall. So, he agrees, I'm only gonna have 30 days,
Yep.
and, but then we got later, additional horse shows may be held with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. We added.
Can you read the line before that?
Yep. And further agreed that there shall be no more than 7 multiple-day horse shows capitalized in any calendar year under this agreement. Additional horse shows not capitalized may be held with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And it's our contention that that would imply that you can add days where needed to make that sentence effective.
That's interesting that we would say 30 days and then just...
Well, it's not interesting, because the reason it was in there is because to prevent the costly endeavor of court and attorneys, when the only issue in this agreement that would be foreseeable to have a discussion about changing would be the shows and the days. That's the only thing in the agreement that would really have a discussion about. Everything else was related to, everything else is pretty much fixed. There isn't anything to really discuss about it. That's why we put language in the agreement to have this conversation and not to have the conversation in a court or elsewhere, is to say, it's to give it's to give us the ability to ask and the ability for the board to address it.
Well, at this point in time, the lawyers that we talked to, 2 of them are saying that we don't have that right. And until such time as they change their opinion, when it changes, and I'm not saying you're wrong or right, but you claim that they read it wrong and they
I don't know what the basis of their interpretation
Well, that's
is.
what I'm
I don't
saying.
know. Well, will the town give me permission to speak to them? I mean, we'll give them permission to speak to me because you pay their bills.
I'm sure that we've had that dialogue before when we were doing the negotiations.
I talked to Attorney Mayo before.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know which one you would choose here.
Cool, but they both had the same
Yes,
opinion.
They both came up with the same opinion. The shows was different than the days. And
So I guess my question is, well, that's one of the questions, but then the next question is that the issue for the board, is the authority to do this?
that's a side issue. We also had some other compliance issues along the way as well.
Well, to not know where we're going yet, but to address first, so at the last meeting, you had, you brought up the issue with water, no details to respond to, no information, just, I guess you heard that was an issue. So I reached out to the Board of Health, and what they told me is there haven't been any issues except for, I think, right in the beginning. She didn't give me the exact times, so I don't know. My guess is that might have been when the plan was either being implemented and working out some of the details, or immediately after that as it was first being done. But she says, after a couple delays in the beginning, Mr. Clausen has been in compliance with and the water is tested fine. I don't know exactly what she means by the beginning, if she was meaning when we were going through all the issues.
Maybe.
Well, it would have been the spring of 18, which would have been after we went through all the issues at the very
Right.
least.
Well, no, I think you're putting words in my mouth. The beginning was 2017, when we were working, was when the Board of Health wanted.
I'm happy to pull all the correspondence out,
Yeah.
because I know I was getting complaints last spring.
Well, she didn't, I don't know what she means by beginning, because this was negotiated and dealt with in the beginning of 2017, dealing with the Board of Health and through that, so I don't know exactly, so, I mean, that's.
I know it was
So
more
we
recent than that.
negotiated it in the summer of 2016, right? and we finished negotiating in the.
No, this is, I'm talking the Board of Health, which was 2017. Outside, this has nothing to do with the agreement.
Oh, okay.
with you guys. So in 2017, because when I went through, it was, we were going through things, I think, at the beginning of the year in 2017, and then I believe in April is when it was finalized in 2017.
And is that when we got to, when the court approved?
Well, that has nothing to do with this agreement.
Okay, all right.
So, I mean, this agreement was actually, the court issued the notice that it was approved in August of 2017.
Because we actually started to live by the agreement prior to.
Yeah, the effective date of the agreement was July of 2016. But then, by the time the court and all that, this is the Board of Health entirely outside of, I would say, nothing to do with the Board of Selectmen, so to speak. This is their, dealing with the water and their issues. That was in beginning of 2017.
But part of the agreement was to comply with the appropriate boards, or the governing boards, right?
Well, according to them, we're in compliance.
Right.
And, well, I guess when I reached out to the exact people you told me to reach out to, and I come back, except for, I mean, her exact words were,
You said in the beginning.
was a couple delays in the beginning.
Whose exact words? Was it Kathleen?
Kathleen Dean,
Drine.
Drine.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, that's the email I got from her.
Yes, that's fine. He's gonna shut up.
Okay, well, I think we
Right.
kicked this, we're beating this to death at this
Well,
point.
I think all I'd have to say is just, we need specifics on what to respond to, and what's a lot of times comes is vague responses. Like the first meeting, the Board of Health says they're a problem, but when I reach out,
Well, now
I'm not sensing there's a problem from them.
Well, we now have something specific. I mean, I came away from meeting with our attorneys with the clear indication that there was a distinction between shows and dates, and that we do not have the authority outside the agreement.
Well,
I mean, short of, excuse me, I misspoke, short of altering the agreement.
we're open to discuss that.
Well, that's something we can deal with, but for the immediate moment here, I don't know where we're at.
Thanks, John.
I guess, that was the water. I know it came up with the issue of the driveways. I know Mr. Clausen is aware of it. I think one of his neighbors bringing it to his attention. I think that issue might be resolved with them. And when I told him he is going to be, looking at making his driveway much more obvious. And I think also I talked to him about, speaking to the neighbors about whether maybe if there's a sign, to put a sign maybe discreetly in front of there, telling no turning around, and directing people, you gotta turn around, keep going. But primarily making his driveway much more noticeable at the time.
And we had the gazebo thing and all of
The
that.
gazebo, I think, is
I think that's been resolved.
it's a done issue right now.
I mean, all those things aside, I'm still wrestling with what I came away with having met with our attorneys, and that's kind of where I'm staying.
That goes back to my, ask if you permit your attorneys to speak to me.
Yeah, I have
I'm-
no problem with that.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't think I have
with the
a problem.
negotiations, I see
Yeah,
no
right.
reason not to.
No, I agree.
I just want to address any other concerns with, I'd like to make that the last concern. If there are other concerns we need to address.
I guess, and sorry, I'm not speaking for you, obviously, but I guess one of the questions that Phil might be asking underneath all this is, okay, if your attorneys
Yeah,
say
is
you
this
can
all-
bump it up,
Yeah.
could you provide any concrete reasons for not approving the increase? And then my question, the second question, not Phil's in this case, would be, once you say yes to 33, at what point could we say no?
Right.
Yeah,
At what
if you
point
don't
can
have
we
a
say no?
concrete reason to deny 100, why
Right,
wouldn't you?
yes.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you want the 2 extra show.
He wants 3 extra show days.
Right? And the attorney says we can grant that,
Mhm.
then that gets granted. And then next year you come in for 40 shows, right? And you're gonna expect that that gets granted. So I think that if any more, I know you did inform the abutters, but what did you do? Send
Well,
them-
because it was specific to the number of days being asked for.
So did you send a certified letter
No, I didn't
to
ask
them?
because this isn't a public hearing, it's not a formal situation. I simply sent, regular mail, first class to the abutters.
I would think that if Phil is interpreting the agreement to say that we can we have no limit on the number of days. That's what your contention is, correct?
Effective.
Your contention is,
Effective.
if we wanted to approve 100 shows, that we could just do that. Is that your stance?
On this side of the table, absolutely. I think we could start looking at some point, the discussion of, you know, the reasonableness. But I think when you also.
So 30 days wasn't reasonable when you agreed to the agreement?
No, 30 days was what was needed at the time we went to the agreement.
Right.
I don't know, what was the old number?
25.
25,
25 to 30, so,
So I would say that if you wanted anything more than the 33, that we would need to go into a formal hearing to formally, and because the butters are the ones, and public safety.
Any-
You know, 'cause the
any-
traffic I mean.
so.
Maybe more than 30, you mean, not
Yeah,
33?
anything more, well, right now, if we approve if our attorney has a conversation with Phil, and they all agree that we have the power to extend it, and you're willing to support that, and we go to 33 days, that stays 33 days, correct? It's not just for 1 year, it stays 33 days.
Well, I believe Scott would like to keep.
Right,
keep it
because I
at
would
33.
imagine if you're adding, you don't want to suppress.
Yeah, we're asking for 33. New England Dressage is taking up 2 of those days.
Yes, and then Silver Oaks is taking up the
And then
next
there's
day.
another day, and that has to do with, there was a show canceled and another show added, which
Right,
puts that over because of the
Right.
change.
right. So next year,
Well, if the town wanted to, once we get beyond the 33-day issue for this year,
okay,
I believe Scott would be more than happy to have a discussion about how to handle it, you know, about a limitation going forward, or how to get some sort of, understanding long term, so we can have an answer to that question.
right, because I think we need to answer that, because I think that we all walked away with a different interpretation. So we interpreted it as 30 days, and you interpreted it as whatever you want.
Well, I think we put in there that we can ask the Board of Selectmen for more.
Right,
comments.
right.
And I believe,
But what would be a no answer? So if we had a room full of abutters who were saying, no way, then you would understand that we would want to limit it. Right.
yeah, we were.
Okay,
One thing that hasn't come up, and just to mention, is one of the things what these changes do, is because the April show is not happening anymore. So that's one of the reasons for these things. So there used to be a show in April, that show's not happening.
okay,
There's Scott's regular show in June, and then there'll be I believe a 2-day show, and then what's proposing is 2 days for New England Dressage.
right,
And then in May, Scott regularly had a 1-week, 5-day show, and now he's actually doing another 5-day show. And one of the benefits of that is the majority of the people are expected to stay for both shows. It's the same, they don't expect it to get involved. And transportation, I'm told, can be very expensive. So that also would limit a lot of the large in and out of the property. Because the large in and out, which we addressed in the agreement about how soon can they come and how quick do they leave, that's expected to minimize that, because you'll have people coming in
And
here.
staying longer.
And a majority of them staying for 2 weeks. I also, while I understand the dates, Scott will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also, you can only put so much use onto these fields. So you can't overuse them. I'm sure you guys deal with that with your athletic fields in town, about people competing to use them as they need rest. So there is a capacity of the park itself that can handle this, that Scott's also working on. But I think what we do.
Probably the only, you asked about, above the 33.
yeah.
I don't know if New England Dressage, if they actually do well, if they would want to expand it. And that's something Beth would have to address.
No.
Okay, she says no now, but okay.
Well, it would be a really exception that we would go to a 3-day show. Simply because we don't have the manpower to run it 3 days.
Okay. Okay.
As far as the dates that I have now, we're maxed out as far as the use of the facility
Yeah,
for the type of event that we do.
right.
Best events, and the New England Dressage events is a totally different type of event. doesn't take up as much abuse as the Hunter Jungle people do that we typically run.
Right. Okay, so I guess, it would definitely have to be some kind of a formal hearing, I think, if we were to ever be back in this room next year for additional days, that we would need to make it more of a formal reaching out even further to, like, the
understand,
abutters,
yeah.
as if we were gonna redo the agreement, because that's what, in our eyes, that's what we're doing.
When do you guys have your fall town meeting?
You don't necessarily have
Yeah,
one.
not
Oh, okay.
necessarily, yeah.
So my thought would be is like to get the 3 days, and then probably like towards the end of the year, discuss, if we need to discuss about notice and all that to, about making, if there's gonna need to be a change. I presume everyone will wanna see how the season goes.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I'm not even gonna consider it unless I hear something different from our attorney.
I understand that.
Okay, just so you know.
Right, but I want to address all the other,
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with your attorney.
And then
no
come
matter what
back
they
and
say,
throw
say,
something else at you, I get
I
it.
presume you guys don't want to spend money on your attorney if there's a bigger issue to deal with. That's why I want to deal with those.
Well, as long as everything stays complied with, that's in the agreement
And the
now.
gazebo is not used at all during the show, because that's really just
Not
for
in-
residential
In its
use.
current status,
Yes.
it's not.
I just want to make sure that, yeah, that's important, that we all agree that in this room. That
That's
is-
what's,
thank
it's on the, I think it's on the occupancy
the permit.
permit.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's,
Thank you,
For residential purposes only.
thank you.
Scott can sit in there and watch the show, no one else can.
Right, exactly.
Or maybe a couple members of his family, and it's big enough.
Or we may have to limit that. Open that to
We'll have to do
negotiation.
DNA.
Give a pass.
That's good, yeah. Okay,
Scott-
so Charlie can, or you,
I'll
we'll have,
contact,
we'll have
contact
the,
council.
and they'll get in touch
I
with you.
trust you still have my email, so you can just email us. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
And just because you mentioned it, pull those emails out for the water issue, please.
Actually, can you forward me that information? so I
Yeah,
can-
all those are public records at this point, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move that we continue this meeting to date certain.
Well, we're meeting on the 12th, I think it is, in the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm leaving the 15th. I was just trying to make sure my days were.
We're meeting on Thursday, too. We're meeting Thursday afternoon. I think on my calendar, we have a meeting on Thursday afternoon. Why would I have that?
It's totally different settings.
Speak to him as soon as possible.
I have it that we have a selectmen's meeting at 3 PM
Maybe.
That was a couple
on the
of weeks ago.
24th. Can you just double
Yeah,
check?
sure.
No,
This week.
I know we have,
I
I know we have waited
Put it up as
personnel.
an agenda item.
on the regrets and everything.
You can, because it's not something that the chair reasonably anticipated to be discussed. You can amend your notice tomorrow.
Yes.
I think
No,
that's,
we have
answer
meeting.
Charlie's question, is if he's
I don't think we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for the auditors.
Oh, we have an audit?
Yeah, that's a financial team, so we're going, but
Yeah, oh, it's on a
I know my
selectmen's
calendar
meeting.
doesn't have anything on it.
Sorry, it's for the auditor, sorry. I thought we had a meeting. Okay.
So we're going to authorize to talk
Yeah.
with Larry?
right, but I guess the question is, do we want to
Should
put
we do a vote
do you want
that
to put-
contingent upon Larry so that we?
No.
No.
I think, I think the board needs to be discussing this.
Yeah, I agree.
Because,
Okay,
But I mean, we could put a specific time in for February 12th if the board wants to.
yeah, I
That's our
will.
next meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep. We have a.
Do we have anything at this point?
No, we
No.
don't have any,
So let's put on for 7:45.
7:45.
If we have any appointments, we'll get them done very quickly, like at 7:35 and boom, boom, and
Yeah, right.
into this.
Yeah, so that puts them out.
Carter, just to clarify, the 12th year starting at 7:30.
At this point, yes. It's 3 weeks away. It's 3 weeks away. Who knows? Plans
I just
change.
don't want to print it.
No, I understand.
correctly.
Yeah, well, no, whether we start at 7 or 7:30, this appointment would be at 7:45.
Got it. Thanks.
Did you guys take a vote on that one to continue it, or is that what you guys doing?
I moved it.
Did you want to try something different?
Well, I mean, it's a long time
Yeah,
and
it's
these
3
people
weeks.
are out
Right.
of the show. I mean,
Well,
I think.
unless the board wants to meet, I don't know how you want to handle the situation, in a sense of obviously, setup right now is for Larry to talk to Phil. But are you thinking hold a special meeting next week, or are you thinking of having a special meeting on Friday at some point?
Well, we're not sure what
Yeah,
our
well,
town
that's-
council's
and that's the thing.
availability is
No, I
either.
understand that, but, I mean, the other people aren't gonna be able to have their show.
Well, even if you were to say tonight, and I think this is where you were trying to go, contingent upon, they're still gonna have to wait
Right.
until we meet anyway.
Okay.
And I don't see that benefits
All
anything.
right, that's
Well,
fine.
I mean, the one suggestion I'd throw out there for the board's consideration is if the board was to look at New England Dressage Association as an entirely separate request outside of Mr. Clausen, I believe you guys could consider them making a request to conduct a horse show at that property. Because it's not Mr. Clausen conducting a show as the other ones is. It's an entirely separate organization to basically, it'd be similar to, I think, your large event permit type criteria, but I think because this is an agricultural property and agricultural use, I don't know if it would have to strictly file in that. I believe, and I'm sure that they wouldn't have any problems complying with all the parameters of Clausen's agreement and to hold their show on whatever the dates in June are. I mean, I think the board can give permission to a third party to conduct their own horse show that just happens to be at that location.
Well, isn't that what most of them do anyway?
That circumvents what we wrote
No,
in the contract.
I mean, Silverleaf runs their own show, right?
I believe.
You don't run Silverleaf show, do you?
No, I don't know.
You do?
I believe Scott runs all the shows except for the one,
Okay, I didn't know, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
Except for Silver Oaks.
Silver Oaks.
yeah, no, I run Silver Oaks also.
Oh, you, okay.
He does a certain portion of it, and I'm actually the manager or the executive director of the show.
Oh,
Which is not a function he would have with New England Dressage. With New England Dressage, I believe he's more or less like the landlord.
He's the landlord.
Right.
We're the less.
Lessees?
So, I understand what you're saying, but it would circumvent the agreement. I think not exactly, because the agreement is between Mr. Clausen and for his shows. I do believe,
His show,
I think
his
it's the
shows
same
on that
thing.
property,
I-
we're talking the same thing.
that's fine.
And again, it's,
I mean, if the board, having consulted with me, or, Larry says I can always talk to the board. I can talk to the board to set up a special meeting date and
Right.
time, depending on the board's preferences and what we
Yeah.
hear from Larry.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the board is interested in, one way or the other, coming to a decision, having worked with council, and, to do that sooner or later, but to provide adequate time for that decision-making to
Right.
occur.
Okay.
And then, so for instance, if you having, if Larry says, hey, look, I'll meet with you folks on Friday, I'll meet with you on Monday, I'll meet with Phil and everybody else on Monday or Friday, whatever.
Well, we're pretty
We'll see what we-
flexible that way.
Well, that's why I understand that's, if the board's schedules were less flexible, I'd be stuck.
Right.
But you're fairly flexible in doing that, and I'd check in with you and we'd see what we can do to arrange a time and date.
I think that's reasonable.
I think at this point, we need to set date, February 12th, 7:45. If we have an emergency meeting for that, we notify the parties involved.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that.
So you, the motion.
We can do it sooner if we're ready to do it soon. And we'll try to do it soon.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
All right.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
well, I'll hear from you, tell Larry tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure Larry will call you.
Actually, once I get the email, I'll be calling him.
I'll send you some other vacation.
Yeah, I know, I come see you anyway. I don't know if that's.
I do not believe we have anything else on the public agenda.
No.
Hannah, do you have anything outstanding?
I don't have anything.
I would move that we go into executive session to discuss negotiating contracts.
With, on the sergeant's contract, the firefighter's contract, and the highway cemetery recycling contract with our chiefs and with the highway surveyor. So, as
And I won't be doing any business with
right, and then given, we're doing this because it would be detrimental for these conversations to be held in public session.
You guys got permission to stay out late, right?
Do I have a second?
Second.
You want it to go?
Tom?
So, yeah, second.
Yes.
Troy?
Yes.
Yes,
Kim, yes.
yes, yes, what time is it?
Good night, everybody.
9:20. Oh, 9:19, actually.
Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.